After spending billions of dollars to snatch a bunch of third parties up, Microsoft's just gonna bring first-party exclusives over to the PS5, and even more to the Switch than they already have. And as a full-grown man who's lived through every console war there's ever been, my initial reaction was flabbergastery, but the more I thought about it, the more I could kinda make sense of it. In fact, when I initially heard these rumors during my seminar for troubled elderly people, my initial reaction was caught on camera, and, well, have a look for yourself.
Hey, what the
From what I can tell, a lot of people on the internet had a similar reaction, so let's go ahead and take a look at the pros and cons of Microsoft bringing their first-party exclusives to rival consoles, and whether or not Nintendo and Sony should follow suit and do the same thing. Okay, so obviously the initial rumors of Microsoft bringing Starfield and Indiana Jones to PlayStation turned out not to be true, but apparently 4 Microsoft games are going to the PS5. Which ones are they? Well, if you ask me, it doesn't really matter, because for the longest time, the entire point of exclusives was supposed to be to make people want to buy a console. While that is still really important, I think the Xbox's business model being centered around the subscription-based Game Pass allows for them to take a little bit of a different approach. I mean, if you own an Xbox for its first-party games, then you could buy them brand new for $70, and I know that some people do, but what most people do, and I'd imagine this is the majority, is pay $17 for a Game Pass subscription, or even less if you buy a code online, even if it's just to play one game and then cancel once you're finished. Not only does this give you access to the one game you wanted, but also access to 100 others as well. Like, sure, you don't actually own any of these games, but if there's only one you want to play for many months, then a full purchase does make sense. But for the majority of titles, most of us only really need like 2 to 4 weeks of the game before moving on to something else. Having exclusives that you can't get anywhere else is a great selling point, but also having a service that lets you play all the new first-party and even some third-party games on day one is another really good selling point too. In fact, you could even argue that this is an even better selling point. However, despite the fact that some third-party games like Persona 3 Reload and Palworld are available on Game Pass at launch, both of those games, and many others as well, still sold millions of copies on other platforms regardless. I'd imagine a lot of PS5 owners would have probably opted for Persona 3 on Game Pass if they had the option for it, even if the deal wasn't quite good enough for anybody to outright buy a Series X or a decent PC to play Game Pass. So if there's millions of PS5, or even Switch owners for that matter, who are willing to play these games, but aren't quite willing to buy an Xbox or Game Pass, then why leave money on the table by not giving more people the option to buy your software? Granted, if you're Microsoft, you don't want Xbox owners to feel like you're spitting in the face of them by offering exclusives to people who chose the PlayStation instead, because, after all, I'm sure there are a good amount of people out there whose budgets made them choose between a Series X and PS5, so I'd imagine people who chose Xbox might feel like they should have just gotten a PlayStation and had the option to play everything. But again, Microsoft's only bringing a few of their first-party games elsewhere, and this isn't even the first time they did it either. And after all, Microsoft bought Mojang and didn't make Minecraft an Xbox exclusive, because that game was already established as an insanely popular multiplat. So taking it away would have only made them look like a bunch of dicks, and not only that, but it also would have left a lot of money on the table. What if Microsoft already owned Minecraft before it came out? Well, I'm sure it would have sold millions of consoles, which is obviously what any console manufacturer should strive for, but what if the game was on Game Pass and there were still millions of people out there willing to pay full price for it, but not willing to buy an Xbox for whatever reason? Well, that's where it gets a little tricky. Obviously, in this scenario, Microsoft wouldn't want to punish the people who did buy an Xbox just to play this one game, just like how Nintendo didn't put Pokemon on the Game Gear, even though millions of people bought a Game Boy just to play it. But at the same time, businesses like to make money, and even beyond that, the developers are artists who probably want as many people to play their games as possible, especially if that means extra money for them. So if you're gonna put your own first-party games on rival platforms, then the key is to find the perfect balance, I think. I mean, I kinda get the logic of moving past the days of looking at exclusives as soldiers in some kind of a bitter battle to the death. It's good for first-party publishers to make more money, and it's good for gamers to have more options. You want your console owners to feel like there's a reward for investing in your product, but offering your entire game library on day one for less than $20 a month is still a pretty good incentive to play on Xbox, at least in my opinion anyway. Like, even if I was a hardcore Xbox fan, man, I wouldn't be upset that PS5 owners are playing my games. I'd be like, idiots. I get to play that same game on my console on day one for kind of sort of free-ish, but not really. Whatever, I get the better deal, you know what I'm saying. Like, obviously, a game like Starfield, something that a lot of people would actually buy an Xbox for, which I'd imagine something Microsoft would want. Hence why it's going to be a first-party game for the near future. But I mean, we're an obscure platformer like Super Lucky's Tale. Yeah, not one person in the history of the universe bought an Xbox just to play that one game, much less someone who's going to buy an Xbox for it after the game is already out for 2 years. So I mean, at that point in the game's life cycle, why not just copy and paste it over to the Switch? I mean, it's only going to make a little extra money and not hurt Xbox in any way, shape, or form. And if Nintendo's gonna pay to add a 25-year-old N64 game to their own subscription service, then why on earth would you turn it down? I mean, nobody's buying an Xbox to play the original Banjo-Kazooie. Obviously, people will play it after buying an Xbox, but it's not a selling point for anybody on the planet. If anything, people playing Banjo-Kazooie on the Switch might even make them want to buy an Xbox just to play Rare Replay. But hey, since Microsoft proved that there's no downsides to selling some of your more random first-party titles on rival platforms, then who's to say that Sony or Nintendo might not do the same thing? I mean, after all, they already both kind of have, with Sony doing quite well on the PC, and Nintendo having done, well, not that great in the mobile market, but still, they both have made games for other platforms, so who's to say they wouldn't dive a little deeper? I mean, it does make way more sense for Microsoft to bring their first-party games to rival consoles, since the market is people who won't buy an Xbox or Game Pass no matter what. The Japanese. Like, Nintendo's entire operations carried on first-party exclusives. If they offer their games on a more powerful rival console, then their hardware sales would definitely take a massive hit. Plus, having to pay royalties to Microsoft's probably not something they'd be up for. I mean, putting their games on a rival console is something Nintendo would probably never do anyway, because for better or worse, they're Nintendo. Their mentality's always been their way or the highway. Whether you want to chalk that up as integrity or stubbornness, though, I do think they could stand to make a good chunk of extra change that they'd otherwise not make if they'd get a little wacky and go multiplat. Obviously, I'm not talking about system sellers like Mario Kart or Tears of the Kingdom, but like, what if they took some money from Microsoft to put something random like Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker on Game Pass, or ported Yoshi's Crafted World or something to the PS5? I mean, would either of those scenarios really even put one tiny little scratch in Nintendo? Will anybody ever buy a Switch specifically for either of those two games ever again, if they ever even did in the first place? No friggin' way. I mean, I don't know. It would still be really weird, and I totally get why Nintendo wouldn't do it, but like, they definitely would make some extra money selling copies on other consoles that they'd otherwise not have sold, even if they did have to pay royalties for these bonus sales. And who knows, maybe some people will really enjoy those games and decide to buy a Nintendo console to play the other ones. Given how direct of a competitor Microsoft is, it seems even less likely somehow for PlayStation to port any of their games whatsoever to Xbox, especially to go on something like Game Pass, but PC's working out pretty well for them, so I don't know, who knows? Then again, most PC gamers are just dead set against playing on a console for any reason whatsoever, so I guess the idea is that you might as well just port console games over there and make some extra money. I mean, PCs aren't really a competitor for consoles, just kind of a different market. Or to a rival console, on the other hand, can get a little tricky though, but there are definitely benefits, which is why I don't totally think Microsoft's out of their minds for porting some of their first-party titles over. Although there's definitely a balance, and to be honest, I don't really know what the right answer is. Maybe porting any of your first-party games is completely moronic, since the Series X is definitely in a firm third place right now. I guess we'll just have to wait and see how far Microsoft goes, and if it leads to Sony or Nintendo following suit someday. But given that Nintendo won't even copy the aspects of Xbox Live that are clearly proven to be a trillion times better than whatever the hell it is they're doing on the Switch, I'd bet anything that they're never gonna go multiplat unless they go bankrupt or something. As far as Sony goes, I just don't see them playing well with Microsoft outside of allowing Xbox games to come to the PlayStation. But anyway, let me know what you think about this mess in the comments below, and if you got a kick out of my wacky rambling, then you should check out my video on the Snowboard Kids series, just because I had a lot of fun making it. If you'll excuse me though, I gotta go clean a full bottle of laundry detergent that spilled all over the floor in my bathroom because my washer shakes like all hell. No, seriously, bye.